All right, friends. Well, we've put out a lot of video content so far as the intro and the first steps. And I've just got a lot of additional information I could continue to kind of blast out there to wet your whistle, to basically get you thinking and asking questions. Remember that Socrates was famous for asking questions, not teaching directly. Ask the right questions, make people think, and then of course they come back with what they're thinking. I think that's part of the coaching aspect that I'm really looking for. Again, if you're interested in working with me, we're going to build a $1 million practice for you. Again, as it grows beyond that, it can easily become a $3, $4, $5 million practice. You get 2 or 3 or 4 of those going on, and you'll be well set up. You'll be helping a lot of people in the therapy world. And trust me when I say that this particular industry is just a growing industry. People are having more and more stress, frustration, anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, family, marital, couples problems. It's just every single day it seems like it's getting worse. And probably because the lifestyle that we live is a stressful lifestyle. I kind of think back, if you go back to like the hunter-gatherer days, what are you doing today? I'm going to go get, something to eat. Okay, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm going to go get something to eat. And that was really the whole, that was the whole focus. And if you didn't get something to eat, you were hungry. And if you did, you were happy. And then there was procreation. And for the most part, you fought off wild animals and maybe other tribes. Now we are inundated with all kinds of things. Well, what's the government doing for me versus what they're doing to me? We got other problems. Well, how's my relationship with my wife and my kids, or with my husband and my kids, or with my extended family, my parents, or with my siblings, and then how is that affecting me? And then how's my job, and how is that affecting me? And just is so much. It's a lot. So because the industry is vast, we got to have a system, and the system that I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to hit in bullet comment. You need to be ready to quickly pause the video, maybe rewind, and then make questions after each bullet, okay? I'm going to read these a little bit. I think I'm going to read them in a way that's slow enough that you'll have time to hit that pause button, right? I'm going to try to take a dynamic pause in between each one. But these are the big topics that I am coaching people already, and have coached people before, and I've helped people in their business. And these are things, by the way, that I made a list of when I opened my practices in 2014. Remember, I retired from the United States Army in 2014 in June, and then by July, my business was up and running. So I had been building this for 3 to 6 months prior to my actual retirement date. So kind of keep that in mind. All right, are we ready? Forgive me if I'm not looking directly at the camera. I'm going to be reading a lot of this because I want to hit these bullets. Pause now, get paper, and get a pen. All right, I assume that you paused and you have paper and pen. If not, pause now, get paper and pen. Okay, all right. Here we go. So we've already talked about who I am, what my education is, what my business acumen happens to be, the level of success that I attained, what systems I put in place, and how I can help you. That's in the first video. All right. You have to decide whether you're going to be a therapist or the CEO. It's very difficult to be both. And if you are going to be both, you're looking at 60 hours minimum per week. And there's more money in running the business than just treating clients. And again, you're going to leverage the resources of other people. These are your therapists, your psychologists, your psychiatrists, your med managers. And by leveraging their efforts, your practice will be the investment. It won't be your expertise that gets you the money. Remember that a therapist is relying on their expertise on an individual basis. They literally are trading 1 hour at a time of their life for the reimbursement rate or the cash payment rate. Don't get me wrong, it's a great way to make a living and there's plenty of money in it, but it's not the same. It's not even close. All right. We did the math. We talked about trading time for dollars. We talked about leveraging the resources of others. That's in another video in the intro. All right. When we started laying the foundation, these are in the, this is after the introduction, okay? These are the first steps. You got to understand the market. You got to understand your competition. You got to understand the difference between a cash and an insurance reimbursement and why you want one versus the other. You got to understand the in-house reception and scheduling versus call centers or billing centers who can do that for you or outsource to someone else. You got to understand how to build that contract. We just went over that for front office people, for employees, and for independent contractors. And then ultimately, when you're building those contracts, you have to include the key and essential material to keep you out of legal liability, inform them, and get an understanding of what the expectation is for your employees. Remember that you have really two big choices. Do you have a therapy-specific practice or a therapy plus med management practice? There could be a third division of that, which could be therapy and psych testing and med management. I would say very few people are going to do psych testing only, although I do know a company, I mentioned them earlier. But let's say you wanted some psych testing along with your med management, along with your therapy. That is a full spectrum outpatient establishment. Keep that in mind. Make sure you understand the difference between paying people a salary and paying people a split or a commission. People that are on a salary are going to ultimately do what's required and nothing more, because the more you dump on them, the more frustrated they're going to get because the pay doesn't increase with that effort. The split, people can actually make more money. Anybody that wants 50 grand from me on a salary, they don't understand how much money they can make as a therapist. If they want that and I promise to give them that, it'll be on a draw, which basically means that until they get enough clients, I'm going to be keeping record of how much I've paid them. And then as they make more and more and more money, I'm going to pay off the draw. It kind of feels like a loan until they become fully established and all of their insurance companies are credentialed, and then they're making a ton of money. And once they paid me back all of the money that I basically gave to them, I forwarded them. It's like an advance. Then I start seeing the big improvements, and they don't get an option to get that big money. The split people, the people that pay up front, they do a little work, they get paid a little bit. They do more work, they get paid more, until finally they're at the 30 to 40 hour mark. They're making a ton of money. They've made more money over the first 2 years than somebody that's promised $50,000. So if somebody wants $50,000, that's all they want as a salary. You're going to end up working those guys to death, and they're going to be kind of stuck with the 50 grand. And you can obviously promote them as you see fit. These are all new categories. Get ready. Establish your LLC because you need the layer of protection against liability. Get your business license as required by state. I don't need one here in Arkansas. You might need one in your state. Build your website early, and I can show you how. Select your location you want to rent and buy. You need that address before you can even build the website. Keep that in mind. Establish your Google My Business footprint. More important nowadays than even the long-term effects of good search engine optimization, you must have the Google My Business up and running. I can help you with that. Build relationships with docs and nurses. I teach that. I can help you do that. Not an easy task. These people will give you referrals because they don't have time to do therapy. They get a client in and out in usually 5 to 10 minutes of their time, not including what the intake nurse does and not including the wait time. But basically, the doc's only going to be in there with 5 or 10 minutes. He's not going to be in there for a full hour. So they give us happily these clients that need therapy. And med management. Docs, the typical docs that do things like strep throat and stitches and the basic family care, those docs aren't good at therapy and don't really like prescribing anxiolytics for anxiety or antidepressants or even antipsychotics. Keep that in mind. They're not good at it. They don't like those medicines. They feel like it's greater on their liability, so they want us to do that. They will refer if you know how. It's a source of income. You absolutely need to have that. I'll show you how. Build relationships with religious leaders, whether you're a religious person or not. By most state state laws and local city ordinances, these religious leaders can give therapy, and they're usually not terribly good at it unless they have a degree in therapy, in which case they still might not be very good at it, and they're going to run out of steam. They're going to need someone that's going to be able to help them. Here's why. Imagine you are the pastor, priest, or rabbi of a religious organization. You're one man or one woman. And imagine that you've got 300 to 500 people in your congregation. The most you could do is 30 people in a week. We already discussed that. That's maybe 10%, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6% if you've got a large congregation. You couldn't see everybody. There'd be no way. Guess who the pastor, priests, and rabbis are referring to? Outpatient therapy. I can help you do that. Build relationships with judges and lawyers. A lot of people get in trouble, drug and alcohol. There's a thing called drug court, and they have mandatory anger management. They have mandatory therapy. They have mandatory drug and alcohol counseling. These people are going to be assigned to you as part of whatever their punishment is for whatever their conviction might be. Trust me when I say it's not my favorite type of therapy, because sometimes they're forced to come, so they don't benefit as much as someone who comes willingly. But it is a source of income, and it is a pretty reliable source of revenue, so keep that in mind. Consider joining BNI, right? Business Networking International. It's a great organization. They will refer their friends and family, their clients, their business associates to you if you're a member. Or other networking groups. Typically, your Chamber of Commerce will have some networking groups. Sometimes they're called a leads group. Join those, spend the time. That's what the CEO's job is. He networks. He needs to know the business people in the community. If that's not you, it's your practice manager. If it's not her or him, then you need to have someone who likes people, wants to be around people, wants to network. That is the person who's going to be best going to these networking meetings. And they have to be a decision maker in many cases. Like, hey, we're going to have this meeting. Are you going to be there? Oh, I got to go back and check with my boss. Not a good answer. Yes, I will be there. I'm the decision maker on this, this particular area. I'm the expert. It's in my wheelhouse. You must establish the look of your office. Comfort counts. That includes how it looks. Is it pleasing to the eye? How it smells, right? How it sounds. Is it peaceful? And do people feel like they can be there even with anxiety? Super huge, right? Super huge. You definitely don't want to have too many bright colors. That really bothers a lot of people with anxiety. Also, social anxiety disorder particularly don't like to be around a lot of people, loud noises. We have to take all that into consideration, and you don't want people sitting in your waiting room. That is a no-no. You get your client the minute they walk in. They are on the appointment schedule for a specific time, and within 5 minutes, they should be shaking hands with their therapist or their psychologist for testing or their psychiatrist or med manager for medicine. 5 minutes. They should not wait in your waiting room for 30 or 40 minutes. That is awful for somebody who's got anxiety, depression, grief, or trauma. All they want to do is get better. All they want to do is see one person. They don't want to socialize. They're not there to be a social butterfly. And many times they feel uncomfortable that they're getting therapy. Anyways, there's still stigma. We've done a great job of getting rid of stigma, but there's still some out there, and some people feel uncomfortable even being there. Don't let people sit forever in your waiting room. That means you hammer, when I say hammer, you continually train your therapists, your psychologists, your psychiatrists, your nurse practitioners. You train them and then retrain them on how important it is to stick to the stinking schedule. And if they can't do it, then they don't have an hourly client. They have a 45-minute client that gives them 15 minutes to get their life together. Or if they run over, it gives them 15 minutes to get that person done and out, right? A 45-minute appointment is better than a 60-minute appointment where the next client is waiting, and then they just get back, more and more backed up. We see this every day at the dentist office. We see it every day at your family health care clinic. It is an awful way to run business. Don't do that. by schedule. Make sure everybody knows their appointment time and they own that appointment time. You should not make excuses for your therapist. They should not make excuses. They should be on time. All right, let's talk a little bit about the practitioner for a second. You want somebody to stay. You train them up. You got them credentialed. That's a ton of work, and you want them to stay like for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years. They need a window. Research has shown they need a window. Don't get an office with a whole bunch of indoor, offices. They need to be facing the outside of the building. Or you buy a house and you retrofit the house where there's windows. That's where the therapy offices are. The interior, like where there might be a study or there might be some other kind of storage area. You don't want to conduct therapy there. You can have a break room. You can have bathrooms all on the interior of the building. On the outside, where there are windows, that's where your therapists are. They will sooner or later get sick of it that they don't have a window. I promise you, this is a thing. Make sure that they have a comfortable chair. They're not going to come to work and sit in an uncomfortable chair. Make sure your clients have comfortable chairs, and make sure that they have a nice desk. It's not wobbly. It's not some piece of garbage you bought from Walmart or that you put together from IKEA. A sturdy desk. I'll give you a tip. If you can easily pick up their desk and move it by yourself, it's a piece of crap desk. It should be difficult for one person to lift on their own. It should be sturdy. It should be comfortable with drawers and enough counter desktop space for them to work. Guys, I was told when I first started that all you're really doing is some apps on your computer, and the electronic healthcare record system is just an app. It's in the cloud. You don't need a great computer to do that work. What I found out was that's not necessarily true. I tried to get away with buying a couple of $200 laptops. Did not work well. They had problems. Not enough memory. They spun. They just the death wheel waiting for something to load up. It was slow. It was painful. It was awful. My therapists were trying to bring in their own iPad or their own small laptop, which, by the way, is possible if you have a 720-bit encrypted electronic healthcare record system, but it's not something that you can do if you don't. If you've got everything held in-house and it's not in the cloud, it's not secured, they should never use their own private stuff, to include their cell phone. Keep that in mind. So give them a good laptop, a good desktop computer. All-in-one computers are pretty good, by the way. You got to have a telephone system. Okay, don't get me wrong. You can run your whole practice based on everyone's personal cell phone. But therapists and docs are not going to want to give their personal number out to be called at all hours of the night, to be texted at all hours of the night, unless they are getting paid for that. If you've got a crisis agreement where you're paying them for those extra hours, the client's going to pay you extra for crisis appointments and phone calls and text messages. You can do all that through Grasshopper. You can do all of that through... oh man, my brain just went... what is that other great phone system? I can't recall. Anyways, there's many digital phone systems. You must have that because you can turn on and turn off the connectivity from the software in Grasshopper, and it won't ring your clinician's phone when they are off duty. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. Same thing for your schedulers. They can use their own personal cell phone, or you can buy them a cell phone, whatever you want. Or you can have a hardline phone, whatever you want. But through Grasshopper and through some of these other great systems, they don't want to be bothered on vacation. You need to be able to redirect all phone calls back to yourself or your backup scheduler, your backup biller, if they're not working for whatever reason. Ring Central is that other one. It's Grasshopper and Ring Central. I've used both. Your electronic healthcare record system needs to be good at doing what you do. So if you have therapy notes, that's a pretty good system. I used it. It works well for therapy especially, and med management. We also have used other systems like CareCloud, for example. CareCloud is an enormous behemoth of a healthcare record system that has so many codes for cardiac patients, for cancer patients. You don't need all that. You need something simple that's tailored, and I would say Therapy Notes CareCloud will probably be best. I can teach you about all of these things. All right. These are the topics that I want to specifically spend time with you on. If you have questions about anything I've said so far, hopefully you've paused, hopefully you've made notes, and hopefully you're ready to call me. You need to be calling me or texting me. If it's a short answer, CareCloud or CareCloud or Therapy Notes, which is better, you can text me that, no charge. Those things are pretty easy. If it's a discussion, then I'm gonna say call me. If you send me a text message and we got to talk about it. If it's benefits, for example, I got to talk about the benefits of CareCloud versus the benefits of Therapy Notes and vice versa. So kind of keep that in mind. These are the things you're really going to need coaching on. How do you run the business? The day-to-day running of the business can be very daunting. If you think, well, I got all my systems in place, my billers know what to do, my schedulers know what to do, my therapists know what to do, my clients know what to do. Well, what are you doing as the CEO? If you don't know the answer to that question, once everyone is hired, once everyone is in the payroll system, once everyone knows their job and they're well trained, once the engine is on and running, so to speak, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, you definitely need to be talking to me. I'll give you this tip. A CEO who sits in his office and plays video games or watches Netflix on his computer will have a failing business. You have to do certain things daily. It's not just looking at reports, for example. It's connecting with your therapist, connecting with the clients in some way, networking. These are the things. Guys, you got to find the best of the best. I'm going to show you how to find the best of the best without costing an arm and a leg. I'm going to show you how to reach out to them directly and invite them to look at your Indeed postings, for example, or Monster postings or other employment postings. And then they're going to want to call you. And then when they call you, I'm going to show you how to weed out the ones that you don't want, how to build a system for finding the best of the best, and some of the key things you got to look for, because there are a few red flags that you guys need to know about. I'll give you a tip. Let's be honest about this. Most therapists are really, really heartfelt, good people wanting to help people. Most are. There's a few ones that you just don't want. Let's forget about those, because you're going to be able to detect many of those. How many therapists do you want who just can't be on time, who just can't close an appointment on time and is always late to work or late to the next appointment? I'm going to tell you, my answer is zero. I don't care how good of a therapist you are. It's zero. If you can't manage your schedule, I don't need you, I don't want you, you're a pain, you're a problem. Here's another one that I'll tell you. This is a tip. This is just one of many. And you guys need to be calling me. I'm going to really bring you on board on these things. But most therapists saw something that made them want to be a therapist. Think about that. The little boy who fell in love with the heroism of being a police officer or a fireman grows up to be what? A fireman or a police officer. The people that, generally speaking, aren't going into corporate business or law or some of these other professions, engineering or architecture, they have a personal experience with depression, anxiety, grief, trauma, personality disorders, other psychological problems, couples disorders or family disorders. These are things that they saw growing up, and it's part of who they are. And probably they were a client. That doesn't mean they can't be a great therapist, but they have to have their issues under control, separate and distinct from what they're doing in the therapy office. I can show you how to detect those and how to ultimately be careful about hiring on somebody who, for example, all they want to do is see borderline personality disorder clients. Why would that be? Don't get me wrong. I had a couple, they were really good, but they themselves are borderline personality disorder, and those things are pervasive, very difficult to manage. If you want a great person who's great with borderline personality disorder, probably they have it themselves, or maybe they had a relative who has it, and that's a great experience to have as a therapist. But you have to decide, do you want that inside your team? It's a difficult thing. I'm not saying we don't hire the BPD guys. I've hired them. The ones that I had were pretty good. A couple of them were awful, and I ultimately fired. I definitely fired one for sure that was brilliant, but unmanageable. Let's also talk about the people that want to be exclusively in the LGBTQ community. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people in that community that need anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, other family and couples help. I mean, of course, they're human beings like everybody else. But if you want to be specialized in just that community, it's going to be very difficult to build their caseload. I would tell them, we'll get you there, but first you have to agree to take anybody I give you. Every anxiety client, every depression client is going to need a good therapist. And if you want to be in the LGBTQ community, you still got to be able to do therapy regardless of their background. And what we'll do is, once we get another LGBTQ client, they have to self-identify as that, by the way. I can't ask them, so to speak. But if they say they're LGBTQ or they want an LGBTQ therapist, then when you get done with your, let's say that you conclude business with your 8 a.m. client and that person no longer needs therapy and now you've got an opening, we get a client that's LGBTQ, we stuff them in there until one slot at a time on your schedule gets filled with the community that you really want. But you can't do that in the beginning. Your new providers have to be open-minded and willing to see everybody. Same thing with play therapy. All I want is kids. I don't like adults. All I want is kids. Or worse, all I want is adults. I don't want any teens. I don't want any kids. Well, you know what? That's going to be a difficult thing to handle. All right, resume search on Indeed, Monster and so forth. Talked about that. Your receptionists and schedulers are essential. If they don't do a good job, you don't get clients. If somebody is willing to pick up the stinking phone, that phone has to be answered. Period. End of discussion. That's non-negotiable. Somebody's monitoring the phone all the business hours, and if no one's monitoring in the evening, it's you. You have to be ready to take that call. Those clients that need help immediately will be lifelong clients or will be great clients until they have a remission of whatever their symptoms are. Billing officials are essential. You can't do it on your own. Anybody that thinks I can be the therapist, I can be the scheduler, I can be the biller, and I can also do all the networking and all the recruiting and so forth. You're going to be a sole proprietor. You're either going to burn yourself out. You want 30 appointments a week, plus you're the biller, plus you don't answer the phone, no one's going to come. They're going to call you. You don't answer, they're going to call someone else. You're going to lose that client. You need to have billers, you need to have schedulers. They need to be independent from the CEO and independent from the therapists. Your therapists and counselors are the bread and butter. You have to have therapists and counselors, in my opinion. Med management is also important, but not as important as the therapists or counselors. They're the ones that pay the bills. And then lastly, you got to have site nurses and site and med managers when you can have them. Guys, that's all I got for you today. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, be sure to hit the notifications bar, and I will catch you again soon.